Hey there clan, and welcome to probably a relatively short video depending on how long I ramble, but I feel as though this is a video that I've kind of postponed on making for a while because I always wanted to do it with fancy graphics and effects, but I decided let's just do the style of the old other videos and just face cam, phone head, in my opinion. And that is what we're going to talk about, my thoughts on a Mass Effect Remastered. That's right, let's talk about it. Let's dive into this, shall we? Okay, now before I go anywhere, I have to state this little tidbit. Mass Effect 2 and Mass Effect 2 and Mass Effect 3 do not need remastered. In all honesty, I think these games are actually still look good to this day. Even though I have problems with Mass Effect 3, it still has points. Even though I have problems with Mass Effect 3's story, graphically wise, it still looks absolutely fantastic. It's still a playable game in my opinion. Same with Mass Effect 2. So I don't think really we need a remastered or a remake. Sorry, a remastered of Mass Effect 2 and 3. Maybe a polish, like polish the games. Maybe allow BioWare to actually go in and maybe fix some of the issues they didn't know how to fix at the time. But Mass Effect 2 and Mass Effect 3, and yes, that does include, if we were to get a remastered, that would be included, don't really need any polish or anything. They are perfectly fine games that you can still play to this day and actually still look pretty good. This is the one that we want remastered. Mass Effect 1, regardless what console it's on PS3, which Mass Effect 1 isn't on PS3, I don't think, if memory serves, because of the licensing issue, on Xbox or PC. Mass Effect 1 is the ugly, I don't want to say ugly, but the not as nice looking sibling to the Mass Effect series. Now that's the only bad thing I really have to say about Mass Effect 1, because Mass Effect 1 is probably still my favourite of the trilogy, but the main problem with the series is the fact that Mass Effect 1 is not as good gameplay wise and graphically wise. Mass Effect 1 still to this day is very tricky for me to actually go back and replay. I actually wanted to capture some footage for this, but it's still incredibly difficult to go back to Mass Effect 1 just because of primarily the gameplay and the graphics. Now don't get me wrong, the graphics still look good when they actually pop in, but that's a problem that Mass Effect 1 has had even since the day I played it, which I didn't play it brand new, I'll be honest, but it still has massive texture pop-in problems, and it still has clunky gameplay. The gunplay in Mass Effect 1 is just not the best. I just think that that's the one thing that I think needs to improve. Now, the story, voice acting, everything else there is fine. But if we were to get a Mass Effect remastered, the only two things that I think would really need polishing up would be the graphics and the gameplay. Once they fix that up, I think Mass Effect 1, if they could get Mass Effect 1 looking and playing like Mass Effect 2, then it would be an absolute perfect series, and I could happily go back and play Mass Effect 1 without the clunky controls or the slightly problem with the graphics. Now I know in terms of game development, this is actually a much more difficult task than I'm outlining it, because if they were to go back and try and revamp up the Mass Effect series, as I said, with a remastered version, Mass Effect 1 would probably be the one that they could have to have the most trouble with. Now I understand there'll be coding issues with Mass Effect 2 and 3 trying to port them to the next generation, but Mass Effect 1 would probably be the one that I think BioWare would have the most difficulty with, due to the fact that the graphics would need all up. Now that could mean they could either keep the engine that it's already based in and polish up, because I do believe Mass Effect 2 and 3 still use the same engine as Mass Effect 1, it's just 2 and 3 they had more time with and were able to polish up. Mass Effect 1, it was like a new engine or something along, I can't remember off the top of my head in all honesty, but if they were to go back and polish up Mass Effect, now it would still be a massive undertaking, I do understand that, to actually get Mass Effect 1 to the same level of graphically looking and gameplay wise of Mass Effect 2 and 3, but I think it can be done, and in all honesty, I would gladly pay to do that. I would gladly buy a Mass Effect Remastered just for the fact that I could play Mass Effect 1 on the next generation consoles, and also have Mass Effect 1 be much more easier to play, because in all honesty, anyone jumping into the Mass Effect series, I would always say start with 1, but I will happily admit that it is a struggle to play it, and that's where I'll come to the gameplay. The gameplay is not that great. Mass Effect 1's gameplay is not good. I understand that a lot of people still think it's okay, like the character leveling up system is absolutely fine. I love that part, but the gunplay, the biotics, the various other parts of the gameplay were just not that good, in all honesty, if you ask me. I do think Mass Effect 2 handled it a lot better. So that's the thing that I think would probably need the biggest amount, would be the gameplay. Would probably be next to the graphics, it would be the gameplay that would probably be something that the BioWare would have to work on to try and get it to the same level of Mass Effect 2, which I don't even think would be possible, as I say, is with the gameplay and all that. We'd have to wait and see what happens, in all honesty. So I think that's really all I've got to say. Like, I wouldn't change Mass Effect 1 for anything, but if I could actually get a remastered Mass Effect 1, I would happily pay for it. I would gladly pay 20 or 30 pound for a remake of Mass Effect 1 alone, but a trilogy of the Mass Effect series on the next generation, I would gladly pay that. And of course, if you want that as well, you have to make your voices heard. It's simple as that. Make your voices heard that you would love to see a remastered Mass Effect 1, because that's something you have to make sure. You have to make your voice heard about that. So tweet about it, post them. Don't harass. Just make sure that BioWare and EA, more importantly, know that you would gladly rebuy Mass Effect 1 or Mass Effect Remastered of the entire series on the next generation. Because not only would that allow them to make a little bit more money, of course, but it would also allow another generation to experience the Mass Effect series and allow us to introduce them to it. Mass Effect 3 be put aside, Mass Effect 1 and Mass Effect 2 are games that I think every RPG lover and sci-fi lover should play. And if we have a remastered, all the better. So let me know what your thoughts are. What would you want to see in a Mass Effect remastered? And I'm saying this right now, no point in saying anything about Mass Effect 3. BioWare did what they could to salvage that, and even that can't be salvaged. I'm not saying like basically make a new Mass Effect 3, not gonna happen. I'm talking about for Mass Effect 1 primarily, because Mass Effect 2 and 3, gameplay wise and graphic wise, they're fine. Mass Effect 1 is where the trouble is. So would you here's the questions. Would you happily buy a Mass Effect remastered version for the remastered version of Mass Effect 1 alone? And what else would you like to see in a Mass Effect remastered? I'd like to see a bit of new content, in all honesty, but that's just me. Other than that, I thank you for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Ciao for now, Mass Effect nuts.